Oh, Lord have mercy. A Houston megachurch has finally opened its doors to Hurricane Harvey survivors, but only after a social media backlash. Senior pastor Joel Osteen, who, by the way, is worth $50 million, had previously refused to shelter flood victims at his 16,000 capacity Lakewood Church. According to Osteen, there was no room in the inn. That left some people wondering if the evangelist cult, animate church, was only good at providing shelter from taxes. Osteen earlier insisted the church couldn't accommodate survivors because the building was flooded, but not just with all the cash from the suckers who usually attend. But prosperity preacher Osteen has made a U-turn, and survivors are now welcome. So was it God who changed his mind, or Twitter? Guess the answer to that really depends on just how gullible you are. If you don't know the answer, send 10% of your salary to us right here at TomoNews every month, and we'll lead you to righteous salvation. Stay strong, Houston. Flood survivor snaps at CNN reporter. A CNN reporter received a serious dressing down when a Houston flood survivor snapped and launched into a live on-air rant.
First day, yeah, that's a lot of but y'all sitting here, y'all trying to interview people during their worst times. Like, that's not the smartest thing to do. Like, people are really breaking down, and y'all sitting here with cameras and microphones trying to ask us what the wrong with us.
So I'm so
and
sorry.
you really trying to understand it with the microphone still in my face, with me shivering cold, with my kids wet, and you still putting the microphone in my face.
The mother and her family are just some of the thousands of people displaced by Hurricane Harvey and the subsequent flooding in Texas. The woman just couldn't believe it when CNN shoved cameras and microphones in the faces of survivors as they sought refuge from the storm. But we'd say there's a fine line here. However shocking or uncomfortable, journalists have a job to do. It's just that some of them lack sensitivity to the needs of others, absorbed in their own ambition and desire to get the story. Fault doesn't just rest with the reporter, however. She has an editor to report to, and would be out of a job the moment she stopped shoving that microphone into survivors' faces. Her bosses, too, have superiors to answer to, and on it goes. We need to see the bigger picture here. The suffering of the survivors, that visceral, voyeuristic connection viewer has to victim, is what we expect to see when we turn on the news. In other words, don't hate the player, hate the game, right? How animals are surviving Hurricane Harvey. As Hurricane Harvey dumped water all over Texas, humans weren't the only ones looking for relief. Animals of all shapes and sizes were caught in the downpour and had to be rescued along with everybody else. The rich animals were the lucky ones, because they were able to get out before the rain hit. Blue-collared friends like Harvey the Hawk wasn't as fortunate. Heavy rains forced Harvey to hail a cab rather than take to the skies. Guess Harvey isn't a big Uber or Lyft fan. Gators have also been trying to escape all the wetness. Many have been seen hanging out in the burbs. And of course, man's best friend and our favorite feline companions were stuck just like everyone else. Oh, heartbreaking. We're talking about that poor cat stuck in the back, not the old grandmas, although they're okay too. And it wasn't only the big animals looking for a helping hand during Tropical Storm Harvey. Insects were in on the action as well. Stay dry out there, folks. How Hurricane Harvey became so deadly. Hurricane Harvey has brought unprecedented levels of rainfall to Texas, threatening the lives of thousands or even tens of thousands. Scientists suggest climate change may have had a role to play in how this storm became so deadly. The first global warming mechanism that may have made the impact of Hurricane Harvey so severe is rapidly rising sea levels in the Houston region, making the area more likely to flood. The second factor is the rising temperatures in the region, which results in more moisture in the atmosphere, bringing more rain to the region. Human-caused global warming penetrating into the ocean past the surface also resulted in a deep layer of warm water feeding the hurricane as it intensified near the coast. Global warming may have also contributed to expanded subtropical high-pressure systems, which trapped Hurricane Harvey in the middle, stalling it near the Texas coast. Scientists say it is difficult to establish a link between climate change and a specific storm, as major tropical storms occur naturally based on many different factors. However, researchers say climate change has worsened the impact. How fire ants survive floods. People in and around the floodwaters from areas hit by Hurricane Harvey in Houston have begun to see colonies of floating fire ant rafts. To escape the rising water, fire ants quickly link together to form a raft. They lock their legs and bodies together tightly enough to trap air in the raft. The ants at the bottom are linked so closely together that no water can get through. The queen and the larvae are kept on top of the structure. The raft changes shape as it floats, with ants moving across the top and joining the stationary layer on the bottom. Fire ants can live in these structures for weeks or longer as they search for dry land. Saved. Hurricane Harvey claimed one less life in Houston after a TV crew helped save a trucker from a watery death. As heavy rain submerged most of the city in floodwater on Sunday, one semi-truck driver found himself trapped inside his vehicle, which was in about 10 feet of water. A KHOU 11 news crew covering the flooding saw the truck and spotted the man stuck inside. They urged the driver to stay put while they called for help. Reporter Brandy Smith flagged down 2 sheriff's deputies who were driving past with a rescue boat and alerted them to the man's plight. Within minutes, the deputies were on a boat and pulling the driver out of his flooded vehicle to safety. Smith and her cameraman kept the video rolling during the rescue and were relieved when the man was finally back on dry land. It was an emotional rescue, especially after deputies recounted a similar incident last year, which ended in tragedy. Hurricane Harvey couldn't keep this dog down. As Hurricane Harvey swept through the state, a lost dog in Texas showed it takes more than a raging storm to beat it. Before Hurricane Harvey's landfall Friday night, Sinton resident Salvador Segovia left his grandson's German Shepherd mix Otis in his screened-in back porch. When Segovia went back to check on Otis later, he was gone. Segovia checked his porch the next day and noticed Otis's bag of dog food was missing. Segovia went looking for the dog and was told by a neighbor they saw Otis strolling around with a bag of dog food in his mouth. Fortunately, Segovia was able to track down the dog's whereabouts and bring him home before his grandson returned. A neighbor who saw Otis thought he was a stray and took a snap of him strolling around with the dog food and uploaded it to Facebook, where the image went viral. According to Segovia, Otis is loved by the folks in Sinton, and he's been helpful to Segovia's 5-year-old grandson, who often goes to the hospital for seizures and asthma.